Hello and welcome to the course of Indian History presented to you by Plus Pramesh E-Library. And here is something about me, the mentor for the course. My name is Supriya Singhal and I have a food blog by the name of Crispy Stories. You can personally directly message me over here on Instagram and I will definitely respond to you. Now before we start further, I think it's better that we actually go for revision. So because it's very complicated and as a mentor it's my duty that you actually learn things here itself so that you don't have to waste much time over remembering later. So medieval India divided into Delhi Sultanate and Mughal Empire. Okay, Delhi Sultanate divided into 5 parts. Remember, slave dynasty, Khiljis, Tughlaqs, Sayyid and Lodhis. Then slave dynasty further divided into Kutubi, Ilbari and second Ilbari. Okay. And here you have basically Kutubuddin Aibak, then you have Iltutmish, then you have Razia Sultan, and finally you have Balbal. So this was the order of slave dynasty. Then we have Khiljis. In Khiljis we had Jalauddin Khilji and we had Alauddin Khilji. And Alauddin Khilji was the last one where we stopped. Now we'll be starting with Tughlaqs. And Tughlaqs will have 3. One is Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, then Muhammad bin Tughlaq and finally Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Okay, I'm making these diagrams so that you guys don't forget it and I'm requesting you to please make such diagrams in your copy also. Now we will start with the Tughlaq dynasty which is 1320 to 1414. So here if you know that founder of Tughlaq dynasty was Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq and you already know that his name was not Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. His real name was something else which you are going to tell me in the comment section below. Then Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq sent his son Juna Khan to fight against the Warangals, and you already know that Warangal was one of the Kakatiyas were there in the Warangal, and he defeated Prataparudra and he returned it with a rich booty, because obviously if he's defeated the ruler over there, he's gonna plunder the city and like take the loot with him. And Ghiyasuddin then led the foundation for Tughlaqabad near Delhi. So first city that we studied was the Indraprastha, then second that we are studying is basically the Tughlaqabad. Sorry, we studied Tughlaqabad. Okay, which is established by Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. Then Ulugh Khan was said to have treacherously killed his father and he ascended the throne with the name of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So Muhammad bin Tughlaq's real name is Ulugh Khan and he is basically killing his own father to ascend to the throne. So after short reign of Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, we have Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Okay. So now we will study about Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So Muhammad bin Tughlaq, I will say just like Alauddin Khilji had many things about him to study, Muhammad bin Tughlaq is also like that. You have to study many things about him. So Muhammad bin Tughlaq was a very attractive character in history, especially owing to the schemes and policies he came around with. And it is sad that all of his policies, all of his experiments, they actually failed. Okay. So we will find that his enterprises and novel experiments, they were actually miserable failures, and it is said that they failed not because they were not good, they failed because those things or those experiments were done ahead of time. Sometimes it's said a time like there has to be a time for something to do. If you do things in advance, they might not turn out that good. So that was the case with Muhammad bin Tughlaq also. He tried to introduce certain experiments and these experiments, all of them failed because that was not the time for those experiments. He was very, very tolerant in religious matters. He maintained diplomatic relations with like far off countries, even in the like the Middle Eastern countries, and then also till the far north, till China. He also introduced many liberal and beneficial reforms also, but all his reforms, as I told you, they basically proved to be a failure. Contemporary writers like Isami, Barani and Ibn Battuta, they were unable to give correct picture about his personality. But Muhammad bin Tughlaq, he was the only Delhi Sultan who had received a comprehensive literary, religious as well as philosophical education. So unlike Alauddin Khilji, who was illiterate, Muhammad bin Tughlaq was a proper literate person, and he thought that he was literate enough, he could actually introduce reforms, but those reforms were basically, they came ahead of time and hence they failed. Now we will see what all Muhammad bin Tughlaq does. So first is he transferred the capital. So Muhammad bin Tughlaq, he wanted to make Devagiri. Remember Devagiri, where was it present? Write in the comment box. So Devagiri, his second capital, so that he can control even South India. And in 1327, he took an expedition to the south. Basically, he wanted to make preparations to transfer this royal household to south, and even along with him, obviously he need to take his nobles, his ulemas, his advisors, and Sufi saints also, and need to shift them all from Delhi to Devagiri. And this Devagiri was then renamed as Daulatabad. When they resisted, the Sultan enforced his orders ruthlessly and caused great hardship to the population of Delhi. Okay, and the distance between these two places, see, Delhi and Daulatabad. So Daulatabad is like in the southern India, Delhi is in the northern India. So distance between these two places is already more than like 1500 kilometers, for which if we take a train today also, we will take at least 18 to 19 hours to reach them. Okay, if you are going by a super fast train. So many people, you will be, obviously they are walking on foot. Till then there was no train, so what is happening? People are walking on foot, covering so large distances, so many people will die during the journey itself. Okay, and this journey was taken in the like those scorching summers. Now imagine summers in India when temperatures already reach more than 35 degrees centigrade, and you are asked to walk 1500 kilometers. This is sad, right? So after 2 years, Sultan abandoned Daulatabad, and he asked again the whole lot of people, administration, military staff, ulemas, nobles, that since we have come to Daulatabad, we have not achieved anything, so let's move back to Delhi. So now you can imagine what is he doing. People must be thinking, well, how is he mad or what? Like, he's first asking to go from Delhi to Daulatabad, and now you're asking him, and now in 2 years again you have to cover that entire journey again. Then comes his reforms on the token currency. So in 1330, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, he introduced a token currency. What is a token currency? Something, basically, if you are saying that this, see, if we say this is a rupees 100 note, okay, that note is actually, the printing cost included, that note might cost you only 1 rupee, but the value is written over that as 100 rupees. So that is what is token currency, wherein you are not getting actual silver, but you are saying that this thing that I am providing you will be marked as silver. So whatever, suppose if I am giving you 2 grams, but I am giving you 2 grams of lead, but you will be priced as 2 gram of silver. So if you carry this coin with you, you will be, basically you will be having a value of 2 gram of silver, but not 2 gram of lead, which the material which actually is making this coin. So that is what is called as the token currency. So you will find that what he did was, he introduced a token currency of which the basis was silver, and now there was a shortage of real silver, okay, in throughout the world. And Kublai Khan, he issued paper currency in China, thinking that there is less silver and now you can't make it as a currency because you can't distribute it in people. So what happens, Muhammad bin Tughlaq also got inspired, and he issued copper coins which were at par with the value of silver tanka coins. So actually what people are getting is the copper coin, but what is the value is being basically charged as the silver tanka coins. But he was not able to prevent forging of this new coins, which what even we see today. Rupees 100 note, 2000 note, they all get forged, and this is the problem even today. Soon the new coins, you will find that they were not accepted in the market because people didn't know if it was a real coin or if it was a fake coin. And finally, Muhammad bin Tughlaq stopped the circulation of this token currency, which was based on silver, but actually they were copper coins. And instead, he actually promised to exchange silver coins for the copper coins, and many people exchanged these new coins, and that is why the treasury that Muhammad bin Tughlaq had, it became empty. According to Barani, who was present then, the head of the heap of the copper coins, like this was the heap of the copper coins that remained lying on the roadside, could be seen in Tughlaqabad, because everyone wanted silver. Now the third reform he took was basically the taxation in the Doab region. So the failure of these two experiments, it affected the prestige of Sultan, and enormous money was wasted. What happens was that, see, first of all, he is going to Daulatabad and coming back. So already lot of money is gone. Then he introduced this token currency reform. Lot of money again is wasted. So in order to overcome these financial difficulties, he basically increased the land revenue, because ultimately, even if you see today, the oil prices are really less in the market, like $12. Even they have gone negative in West Texas Intermediate. But are we getting crude oil or petrol or diesel in cheap prices? Answer is no, because government is thinking that if whatever the gap is there in between what they are paying and versus what you are paying, they will utilize it as a tax component and they can use it for welfare of society. Similarly, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, he increased the land revenue in the farmers of Doab, and Doab is the region I told you where two rivers flow. For example, this is the region which is between Ganga and Yamuna, and since he thought that this region is already very fertile, this has like new younger alluvial soil which is Khadar, so that is why people here, there will be bountiful crop and people will be able to play revenue. But what happened was that it became an excessive and an arbitrary step on farmers. A severe famine was also ravaging this region over a time, and finally what happened was the peasant revolts, and that is why you will find that Muhammad bin Tughlaq, he took harsh measures on these peasants to capture and punish them. But then what happened? Revolts got crushed, but Muhammad bin Tughlaq became infamous. Then came his next reform in the field of agriculture. See, you already know that peasants are in bad condition. You know that if you even increase the land revenue, you might not end up getting more land revenue. So Sultan realized this and he started now providing relief measures. So understand his psychology. He is doing things, not working out, taking them back, doing other things. But if you do these things repeatedly, see, one time even people accept that you can do mistake. If you do the same mistake 5 times repeatedly, and being a king, when you already have so much of responsibility on your shoulders to maintain the entire empire, people start distrusting you, and this is what happened. He did agriculture reforms, didn't work, and then he started providing them relief measures, okay, so that he could actually improve agriculture. And he launched a scheme of giving Takavi loans. Takavi loans means loans given for cultivation of crop, which were given to farmers so that they can have money which to which they can buy inputs, they can buy seeds, and they can also expand in cultivation like new technologies, etc. So that if there is a bountiful crop, ultimately it will be the state that will be beneficial. And a separate department called as Diwane Kohi. So Diwane Urs you remember, Diwane Riyasat you remember, and now it is Diwane Kohi which was established, and this is the Department of Agriculture. A model farm was created under the state in which the government will spend 75 lakh tankas also. Okay, and this experiment was further continued by Firoz Tughlaq. But this experiment also failed because many farmers, irrespective of they could pay or not, they took Takavi loans from the government because they thought it's like a free money. And then you will find there were rebellions in his kingdom. So the later part of Muhammad bin Tughlaq's reign, it witnessed a spate of religious rebellions by the nobles and provincial governors. The rebellion of Hasan Shah resulted in the establishment of Madurai Sultanate. Okay, and you will also find that it is Muhammad bin Tughlaq's reign only, and this is important to remember because this was asked in civil services that whose reign Vijayanagar kingdom was actually carved out. So either you need to know the year exactly, and you also need to know the year of the Delhi Sultanate, like which dynasty is ruling, or you just directly remember that it was Muhammad bin Tughlaq's failed reforms which led to the basically you can say independent kingdoms being carved out. For example, in 1336 there was Vijayanagar kingdom, and exactly 10 years later you have Bahmani kingdom getting established. Okay, the governors of Awadh, Multan and Sindh, they also started revolting. See, basically this region, the extreme northwest region, they also started revolting against Muhammad bin Tughlaq, and even in Gujarat, and you will find other regions also, the people have started revolted against the Sultan. Okay, Muhammad bin Tughlaq's health is also becoming worse, and finally he dies in 1351. And according to Badoni, the Sultan was freed from his people and people were free from Sultan. That means nobody is actually remorsing the death of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. All are just happy that finally they are free from this ruler, and ruler is also free from us. Okay, and Barani only says that Muhammad bin Tughlaq was a mixture of opposites, like two extremes. He would never do something that is moderate, either this or that, nothing in extreme, no grey area. And that is why his reason, his reign, his whole you can say his empire during his time was actually a product of lot of failures, and that's what led to the decline of Delhi Sultanate during this period and led to the establishment of independent kingdoms of Vijayanagar, Bahmani coming into existence. After Muhammad bin Tughlaq came the Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Okay, so before that what we'll do, we'll just like make a flow diagram, just like we have been making, so that you know we understand and remember things. So I'm just making here the diagram for Tughlaqs. Okay, in Tughlaqs we have Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, who established the Tughlaq empire. Then we have Muhammad bin Tughlaq, the Mad King, and then we have Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Okay, So Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq is basically the one who establishes. You can write here founder. Okay, you can also write his real name. But that I'm not going to tell you because I've asked you to write it in the comment box below. So you have to write founder. Then you have to write his real name. Then you have to also write that he was the one who established the city of Tughlaqabad. Then comes the Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Okay, first of all you write that he is literate. Then you write his reforms. Okay, and then you write basically failure. And now you start writing his reforms. For example, यहाँ पे you write Takavi loans in Takavi loans. Okay, then Diwane Kohi, his new department. Okay, then you also write here increasing land revenue, and then peasant revolts. Okay, then you also write here basically token currency. Okay, then here write shifting of capital. Okay, you might not be able to see it. I'm just gonna like rub this all and write it on the top, otherwise you won't be able to see it. Okay, so here if you're writing reforms, write first of all Takavi loans. Okay, so here you write agriculture basically. So you write Takavi loans, you write increasing land revenues. Okay, and you write peasant revolts. Then here you write token currency. Okay, then here you also write token currency, then write shifting of capital to Devagri, and in bracket you write Daulatabad. Okay, so that you remember, and then shifting back again. Then here you also write Diwane Kohi because it is related to agriculture department. Okay, then what did Muhammad bin Tughlaq do? The transfer of capital we have already done. Then Daulatabad, and then finally we will see the rebellions. Okay, and here it's not in the reforms, it's in the other section. We will write rebellions, and here you will write Gujarat, Sindh. Okay, and finally establishment of Vijayanagar plus Bahamani kingdom. So I didn't have space to write, but you have, and please write it so that you have these small snippets wherein you can revise the entire chapter. With this we complete the Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Now we will move to the next ruler, which is basically Firoz Shah Tughlaq or Firoz Tughlaq. Okay, so you will realize that Firoz Tughlaq started ruling from 1351 till 1388. So hardly 30 years of rule. And after the death of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, it was Firoz Tughlaq who had the unique distinction of being chosen as Sultan. He is not the one who is killing someone and becoming Sultan. He was chosen as Sultan by the nobles, and that is why it said that he had a very unique distinction, because generally if you see in Delhi Sultanate, people are becoming Sultan by killing someone, and here he is not killing anybody. He has been chosen as one by the nobles. Okay, he appointed Khane Jahan Makbal, a Telugu Brahmin. Okay, imagine he's a Hindu. Okay, so he's appointing a Telugu Brahmin who is converted as Wazir, convert as Wazir Prime Minister. Then the Wazir only helped the Sultan in basically maintaining his administration and maintaining the prestige of Sultanate during these Firoz Shah Tughlaq's time. So now we will look at the reforms that Firoz Shah Tughlaq takes. For example, is military campaign. So after his accession, Firoz had to face a problem of preventing the disintegration of Delhi Sultanate, because already Vijayanagar is separated, Bahamani is separated, and now basically he is trying that the whatever empire is remaining, it should not disintegrate, and he tried his best to safeguard, to consolidate his authority in the North India, and he reasserted his authority in the North India rather than going to South and expanding his empire. He also led 2 expeditions to Bengal, but obviously they were not successful, and Bengal also became free during Firoz Shah Tughlaq's time. Firoz Shah led a campaign against Jajnagar, which is the modern Odisha, and he was successful there. He actually looted a lot also from the temples, because we know that Puri is the temple city, and he marched against the Nagarkot and made the ruler of Nagarkot also to pay tributes to Firoz Shah Tughlaq. And during his campaign, what happened was Firoz Shah Tughlaq discovered that there are so many Sanskrit manuscripts, okay, and from a temple library of Jwalamukhi, okay, and he realized that there is so much information in this that if he actually converts them into Persian, it will benefit the community. So he gets them translated into Persian, and in the next you will find that he also goes to Sindh to capture that region. Now after learning about his military conquest, we will see the administrative reforms taken during the Firoz Shah Tughlaq's time. So the reign of Firoz Shah Tughlaq was basically notable for his administration, and mark my words, because he is the one who is taking the reforms done by Alauddin Khilji, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, and his reforms will be then taken by Sher Shah Suri and Akbar. So his reign is famous for administration. He strictly followed the advice of ulemas, who are basically, you can say, the religious heads, present in the court in running the administration, although they should be confined to religion, but still, since they were the one who actually made Feroz Shah a sultan, so he also listened to them very patiently. He wanted to please the nobles, and he basically assured that after him also there will be like hereditary succession, not only of the throne but also of the properties. So if there is an ulema who owns a property, then that property will get transferred to his son or whatever, like basically his son in the next generation. So that is why he basically pleased ulemas by saying that there will be hereditary succession of properties. Thus the Iqta system was not only revived but also it was made hereditary. See, what is Iqta system? Iqta system was basically when a particular land was given to someone for collecting the revenue and maintaining over it. Now this was called as the Iqta, and the person holding it was called as Iqtadar. Now this Iqta and Iqta system, whatever it is called, this Iqta system was not hereditary, as in the Sultan could transfer these lands to anybody, any else ulema or any other noble also. But now after Feroz Shah Tughlaq, what he did was he made this Iqta system hereditary. That means now if you are the ulema or if you are a noble having the property, then only your son or basically your inherited child can have this property. So Iqta system became hereditary, and this is important because this was asked in one of the state services examination. Then as per the Islamic law, he also revived a lot of taxes. For example, jizya was strictly imposed on non-Muslims, and he was the first sultan who also imposed an irrigation tax. Okay, but at the same time, see what he is doing. He is telling people that I'll give you everything, but state cannot run in deficit. You have to provide me back, and that is why he is taking taxes. So he imposes taxes wherever he can, even on irrigation also. But at the same time, it's not like people are not getting anything and they are paying tax. No, he was digging wells, he is making irrigation available to people, and in lieu of the work that he has done, he is asking people to pay as a tax. But at the same time, he also dug irrigation canals and wells, and the longest canal was about 200 kilometers, which ran from Satluj to Hansi. Okay, another canal was built between Jamuna and Hisar, and there were around 1200 fruit gardens in and around these Delhi, which obviously yield more revenue. The special tax was done on 28 items, was abolished by him since these taxes were against the Islamic law. And he also developed these royal factories, which are called as karkhanas, okay, where thousands of slaves were employed. About 300 new towns were also built during Feroz Shah Tughlaq's reign, and the new town that he established was Firozabad, which was near Red Fort in Delhi. So we have already done Indraprastha, Tughlaqabad, and now Firozabad. Okay, and it was also called as the Feroz Shah Kotla, which exists even today. So old monuments like Jama Masjid, Qutub Minar, they are also repaired during his time. Okay. And Qutub Minar, I already told you, there was Qutubuddin Aibak, then there was Iltutmish, and finally there is Feroz Shah Tughlaq. Okay, a new department, just like we have seen 3 new departments, Diwan-e Riyasat, Diwan-e Arz, and Diwan-e Kohi. Now we have another new department by the name of Diwan-e Khairat, and it is created to take care of orphans and widows. Free hospitals and marriage bureaus, etc. are established. Feroz also patronized like scholars which existed before in Muhammad bin Tughlaq's time, like Barani and Afif, and he was also guided by ulemas, because I told you he had a lot of trust on ulemas. He was also intolerant towards Shia Muslims and Sufis, because he is listening to this orthodox ulemas, and that is why he is following Sunni religion, and he does not like very much Shias and Sufis. And he also treated Hindus as a second grade citizen, and that is why he imposed jizya on them. In this respect, he was very you can say see, if we have to compare the rulers, we actually compare them either with their predecessors or with their successors. So here we are comparing Feroz Shah Tughlaq with his person who's gonna come next to him. One is Sikandar Lodi, and then next to him is Aurangzeb, because even Aurangzeb was very intolerant toward other religions. The Feroz Shah Tughlaq also increased number of slaves by capturing the defeated soldiers and young people. Okay, and Hind is the region only, it is said that the amount of slaves, the number of slaves were highest, around 1,80,000. And when Feroz died in 1388, the struggle for power between the Sultan and nobles once again started. Because till now, what happened was Balban decreased the power of nobles. Alauddin Khilji further decreased it by not even allowing them to marry within each other. But now, after Feroz Shah Tughlaq, they have again regained their power. And that is why now the conflicts are happening between Sultan and nobles. Okay. In the following years, you will find that Delhi Sultanate further disintegrated, because already, see, already the king is weak, empire is big, then it is disintegrating also. Vijayanagar gone, Bahmani gone, and nobles are becoming stronger. So nobles are also fighting for their territories, and in this way you will find that Delhi Sultanate had disintegrated further. Many provinces like Malwa, Gujarat, they also became independent, and in this time only you will find that invasion of Timur is happening. Okay, and when Timur entered Delhi, you will find that Delhi was in such a bad state that there was no opposition in Delhi to actually hold back Timur, and he basically kept on plundering, looting Delhi, murdering thousands of people, and taking back the entire loot. But he had no opposition. He withdrew from India in 1399, in 1 year basically, and his invasion, in fact, you will find that it was a blow to the Tughlaq dynasty's mighty power. Okay, so now we have done Firoz Shah Tughlaq also. So what we'll do, we'll just like we are doing earlier also, we will go back and we will try to basically make a flow chart. So Muhammadan Tughlaq already done. Now Firoz Shah Tughlaq. First of all, you should write his real name. What is his Firoz Shah Tughlaq's real name? Okay, and then you will also write about the Telugu Brahmin that who was there, that Khane Jahan, who is basically a convert and who is now helping Firoz Shah Tughlaq in administration. Now what you will also write, you will write basically Nobel's power increased, and in Nobel's in the bracket you will also write ulemas, so that you know that what ulemas means. Then here you will write his military campaigns. Okay, here you will write consolidation of power, then Bengal expedition, and then you will write the cross because it failed. Okay, then here you will also find that he is successful towards Odisha because he loots that city, and then he actually gets the booty from them. And also during his, and then after that you will write basically translation of Sanskrit manuscripts to Persian, so that you remember that he has actually translated them. Okay. In the end you will find his administration reforms. So now before writing them, I'll just scout for the space, otherwise it will be difficult. So what you will write administration reforms, and administration reforms, what you will do, you will write his reforms that were taken. For example, he established this new Diwane Khairat for basically widows, etc. Then he was the one who introduced new taxes. Here you write irrigation tax and jizya. Okay, then you also will write that how you will sorry. Here you will find that he also made Ikta system hereditary. Okay, and after that he also, you will find that he also led he also led these canals. Okay, long canals. We know that there were 2-3 canals that he built. And finally you will find that he established the city of Firoz Shah, Kotla also. Okay, and then you will find that this one, okay, that he hired more slaves, and ultimately finally disintegration. So this is all you need to know about Firoz Shah Tughlaq. What is it? The reforms that he introduced, administration reforms, the Ikta system being made as hereditary, then tax reforms of irrigation and jizya tax, etc. Then his intolerance towards Sufis and Shias. Then Diwane Khairat, the new you can say department for widows and people helping them out. Then building long canals. Then also you will find that he was the one who hired most of the slaves, and finally you will realize that he also translated a lot of Sanskrit manuscripts. Okay, and in his time only you can write that Temur started invading India. So with this we finish the Tughlaq dynasty, which is the third dynasty in Delhi Sultanate. And now what will we start? We will start with Sayyids. Okay, and you will find that in Sayyids and Lodhis there is nothing much to remember, and there are few elements that are important from art and culture point of view, which we will cover in the art and culture course. So before his departure from India, you will realize that Temur, he appointed Khizr Khan. So we know that Temur came to India, he plundered the city, he was there in Delhi, nobody opposed him, and he actually was successful in establishing his control over Delhi. So he now appoints his governor Khizr Khan as the governor of Multan, and he captured Delhi and founded the Sayyid dynasty. So who's the founder of Sayyid dynasty? It's Khizr Khan. Okay, who was the governor of Multan under Temur. Now he tried to consolidate the Delhi Sultanate, but obviously he couldn't do so, and he died in 1421, and his son Mubarak Shah basically continued the reign. Then Muhammad Shah succeeded like him, and he was also busy against, whenever there is noble's power increasing, no, there will be disintegration of empire, because there will be a lot of conspiracies, there will be a lot of these games that are being played to actually pull back the ruler. And Muhammad Shah also died, and after that came the Alam Shah, who was the weakest amongst all Sayyids, and finally he was overthrown by Behlul Lodi, okay, who basically established the Lodi dynasty. Okay, so in Sayyids, I told you that there is nothing much to remember, so we can just draw a graph over, sorry, a flow chart over here only. So we will write Sayyids. In Sayyids, basically you need to remember Khizr Khan, okay, and here you write governor of Multan under Timur. Okay, then you will write after Khizr Khan, Muhammad Shah, Mubarak Shah, and finally Alam Shah, that you don't need to remember, but just remember that finally came the Behlul Lodi. And now we will start with the Lodi dynasty, which basically ended till 1526 with the first battle of Panipat fought between Ibrahim Lodi and Babur. So Lodis, who succeeded Sayyids, they were Afghans. Until now, whatever we studied, they were all Turkish. Remember? They were favoring Turkish and not favoring Indian Muslims. So they are all Turkish. And who is Afghan? Lodi. And this was asked in the UPSC prelims also. So Lodis are Afghan in nature, and Behlul Lodi was the first Afghan ruler, while all his predecessors in Delhi Sultanate were Turks. He died in 1489 and was succeeded by his son Sikandar Lodi. And you will find that first is Behlul Lodi, then is Sikandar Lodi, and then is Ibrahim Lodi. So Sikandar, BSI, remember BSI mark, so that is how you can remember. So Sikandar Lodi was the greatest of 3 Lodi sovereigns. If you have to compare that who was the most powerful ruler, it was probably Sikandar Lodi. Okay. Sikandar Lodi was the greatest of 3 Lodi sovereigns, and he brought the whole of Bihar under his control. Even many Rajput chiefs were also defeated, and he attacked Bengal and forced the ruler to have to accept his sovereignty, to also conclude a treaty with him. He also entered Punjab. He was a good administrator. He laid down roads, okay, irrigation facilities, and despite you will find that he doing all this, he destroyed many Hindu temples, and he started imposing restriction on Hindus, and that is why you can say he was little infamous among Hindus. But still, if you have to compare all the 3 Lodis, then he was the greatest Lodi Sultan. After Sikandar Lodi will come basically his eldest son Ibrahim Lodi, and this Ibrahim Lodi guy is very, very arrogant. He was the one who used to insult nobles openly, okay, in the court, and he used to humiliate them in front of everyone. And obviously, what is happening? When nobles' prestige is declining, their image is declining, so they will start revolting. Okay, and once they revolt, then Ibrahim Lodi will kill them. So obviously, he is not getting a very good image. Now, his own uncle Alauddin revolted against Ibrahim Lodi, and Daulat Khan Lodi, you will find the governor of Punjab, who he was also insulted, and he was also basically insulted by the king. He was said upshabd, or those words which he didn't want to hear, and that is when this Daulat Khan Lodi, who is actually the uncle of Ibrahim Lodi, he plans to invite Timur to invade India, or Babur to invade India. Okay, and that is why basically he invited Babur to invade India, and Babur then marched against Delhi, and he defeated Ibrahim Lodi in the first battle of Panipat, which happened in 1526, and this was done in KBC also. And then you will find that Afghan kingdom, it lasted only for 75 years. Why? Because all other previous kingdoms were Turkish in nature. So now before we move forward, what we'll do, we'll just take Lodis, which is the last dynasty. Here we will write Behlul Lodi, then we will write Sikandar Lodi, and then we will write Ibrahim Lodi. Okay, and in Lodis in the bracket we will also write Afghans, so that we remember that where do they belong to. Okay, and then Behlul Lodi is not much, but you can just write here founder. Then you have Sikandar Lodi, you can say mighty, so that you know that there was the mightiest of empire among him. You can also write roads and irrigation. Okay, and then you will find that there is not much to learn about Sikandar also. But then Ibrahim Lodi, you will find that he is the one who first battle of Panipat you will write. In first battle of Panipat, in the first battle of Panipat you will write he lost, and finally what came was the reign of Mughal Empire. Okay, so with this we finish the entire chapter of Delhi Sultanate, and what is remaining is the next chapter, wherein we will be discussing about the reforms and what all happened, and how the country was divided into different states to rule, etc. under Delhi Sultanate, which is the chapter number 17. So we are nearing the end of the book. After this we will probably be starting with Bhaktis and Sufism, and then probably we might go to Mughal Empire. Okay, and after that we will start with modern history, which is Tamil Nadu class 12th. Okay, So I hope you are learning a lot in this lecture, and in the next class also what we'll do, we'll start basically we will first make the flow diagram so that you remember all the kings, instead of and reforms that we are making these small diagrams that you make right now only. In the next class we'll only take an overview and then directly jump to the next topic about the reforms taken under Delhi Sultanate. Thank you.